Welcome to Newlane's Introduction to Philosophy course. As you can see in this short description, this is an introductory survey course of philosophy that will introduce you to the fields of ethics, epistemology, metaphysics, logic, the history of philosophy, and to the basics of reading and writing philosophy. You can see the goals here, and I'll just walk through these. The goals for this course are to identify and describe major areas of philosophical inquiry, to summarize the broad outlines of the history of Western philosophy, list the main eras in the Western philosophy tradition, reconstruct and evaluate arguments, describe different broad notions of the work of philosophy, identify and explain historically important philosophical arguments and contextualize these in light of general philosophical problems, fields, or trends, and construct philosophical arguments and articulate and respond to objections. So this course will, and you can see the lessons here. So we'll first start with what is philosophy, tracing back to the roots or the origins of the Western philosophy tradition, and ask or look into what is distinctive about philosophical inquiry. Then we'll take a very broad stroke into the history of philosophy, kind of going from the ancient era starting in Greece, working up to the beginning of the 19th century. It's a very broad stroke that we'll be painting the history of philosophy, but we'll be looking at some of the important developments across those time periods. And then we'll be looking into epistemology, which asks questions like the meaning of knowledge, what we mean when we say we know something, what are our justifications for claiming to know something, and what are competing schools of thought on that. And then we'll be looking into two important texts in the history of philosophy. One is from Plato's Republic, The Allegory of the Cave, and the other is Descartes' argument from his Discourse on Method and Meditations on First Philosophy that concludes with the famous phrase, "I think, therefore I am." These two texts are brief texts. They don't take very long to read, but they are two of the most important texts in the history of philosophy, and so they'll introduce you to philosophical writing, and you'll get to engage some important texts and arguments that have really stood the test of time. And then next we'll look into metaphysics, which asks questions like, what is ultimate reality? What is the world made of? And then we'll look into ethics, which asks questions like, what makes a behavior good or moral? What constitutes the good life? What makes a moral act moral? And then we'll look into logic, and logic is about putting together arguments, identifying how an argument holds together. Also, we'll look into some fallacies of logical thinking, so to show what are some common fallacies that make an argument invalid. And then last, we'll look into philosophical writing. Now, over the course of this course, you'll be introduced and exposed to a lot of philosophical writing, but it's different to read philosophical writing than to write philosophical writing. And we'll mostly try to stay focused on what we've encountered in this course. So it may be an argument that you write in response to the Allegory of the Cave, or to Descartes' argument that ends with the claim, "I think, therefore I am." But we'll go into some of the practices and conventions and goods of philosophical writing, and you'll have the opportunity to do your own philosophical writing in a paper around 1,000 words in response to one of the arguments that we've read in this course, or you'll respond to an argument or an idea in this class, maybe from epistemology or metaphysics or ethics. So that is the Introduction to Philosophy, the Newlane course, Introduction to Philosophy. We hope you enjoy it and get a good foothold on philosophy.